ในส่วนถัดมาค่ะเดี๋ยวเราจะมีวงสัมมนานะคะซึ่งเราก็จะพูดคุยกันนะคะเกี่ยวกับเรื่องของจากธุรกิจในของประเทศไทยเนี่ยนะคะแล้วเราจะพัฒนาไปสู่เกี่ยวกับเรื่องของการปฏิบัติการเรื่องความหลากหลายทางชีวภาพได้ยังไงนะคะเราก็มีผู้ดำเนินรายการแสนสวยของเราอีกท่านหนึ่งค่ะคุณสิริพรนะคะศรีอารามขอเสียงปรบมือนะคะให้กับคุณวีวีของเราอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะคะห้ามพูดสวยนะคะบอกห้ามพูดสวยเพราะว่าอันนี้มาจากใจนะคะแล้วก็นอกจากนี้นะคะดิฉันขอเรียนเชิญคุณอดัมไบรดันนะคะขึ้นสู่เวทีนะคะผู้อำนวยการกลุ่มด้านการพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืนกลุ่มบริษัทไทยยูเนียนนะคะและท่านที่2นะคะคุณแดนนะคะประถมวานิชผู้บริหารบริษัท NY Instant Produce จำกัดนะคะหรือ NRF นะคะและตัวแทนอีกท่านหนึ่งจะเข้าผ่านเราทางออนไลน์นะคะคือคุณนิกนะคะและสุดท้ายนะคะผู้ที่ขึ้นร่วมบนเวทีกับเราในวันนี้นะคะคือตัวแทนจาก Union J Plus Thailand คุณชุติการชัยสิริไพบูลย์ขอเสียงปรบมือต้อนรับทุกท่านด้วยค่ะ
บอกคุณคิมมิมว่าอย่าเรียกแนะนำว่าพิธีกรคนสวยเพราะว่าถ้าไม่สวยนี่คนเขาจะขำอยู่ลึกๆ นะคะก็ thank you so very honored to be here to be your panelist today so โอเคเดี๋ยวจะขออนุญาตบรรยายเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะคะ So today with all our guest speaker we will have learned from the private sector from the case that have tackled the actually everybody of us here tackle the triple planetary crisis issue talking on the fishery climate change and also the pollution so I would like to proceed now to ask Kun Adam to share with us about what is the Thai Union doing on the SeaChange program ค่ะ You have 10 minutes for the first round.
Thank you very much. Good, so thank you for the opportunity. A brief background, I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for Thai Union Group. We're one of the largest seafood processors in the world, headquartered in Thailand, but with a significant market across Europe and also the North America region. Okay. We're waiting for the clicker. So as a little bit of background, you'll see this in the slides that I'll take you through. We introduced our sustainability strategy back in 2016. So this isn't necessarily a new topic for us, but what we've done over the last 6 months is significantly upgraded our strategy. And we've introduced a new strategy, which is now called SeaChange 2030. So to kind of take you through the history of sustainability, as I mentioned, we started in 2016, and the seafood sector is quite a high-risk sector for sustainability. And so there are two predominant areas that we focused on since 2016. The first was really around social and labor. Given the importance and given the reliance on outsourced work, often migrant work that happens down very long, deep, complex supply chains, we felt that it's imperative to really make sure that we have robust mechanisms in place to protect and safeguard the workers in that supply chain. And then the second area really focused on the topics of biodiversity. We are ultimately reliant on a natural resource. We are reliant on predominantly tuna fish. And so it's inherently in our best interest to make sure that those fish stocks are maintained to biologically significant levels. And so those are the two areas that we've been focusing on since 2016. We've upgraded our policies over the years, and we've introduced a number of different programs to really lead to where we are today, which is, we've carved out this leadership space within sustainable seafood. We've been recognized a lot for the progress that we've made to date, both within the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, but also the Seafood Stewardship Index. But that's honestly not really what I'm here to talk about. I think what we've challenged ourselves as is how do we help to redefine what it means to be a leader in this space, not simply to acknowledge and be happy with the progress that we've made, but where do we go forwards as we look towards 2030? So SeaChange 2030 is our sustainability plan that provides unified solutions for both people and planet. And when we created SeaChange 2030 and we launched it in the middle of last year, things were very different to where we were in 2016, right? And I think this is important because this panel is focused on financing, and the reason why this is so important is because we need to engage a multitude of different stakeholders, many of those that you see up on the screen. So when we started, we hold our hands up and saying it very much was born out of NGO campaigns, NGO visibility in terms of what was going on in the seafood sector, and a long, hard look at ourselves at Thai Union saying, you know what, we can be doing better and we should be doing better. But when we launched our new strategy in the middle of last year, it wasn't just based on NGO campaigns anymore. In fact, we've had very successful relationships with Greenpeace and WWF and many of the environmental NGOs. And now the pressure points come from investors. It comes from academics. It comes from customers and consumers. And so what that's meant is that our new sustainability strategy is much more holistic in nature. And you'll see that over the next few slides. But as we talk about attracting financing to the fishing sector, we've really got to look at this end to end. We've got to make sure that there is a framework in place from policy perspective. We've got to make sure that there's an incentive model in place, which often means linking through our customers down to the consumer to make sure that that model is robust. So let's just quickly go into the details of the strategy. So the strategy is divided into 2 thematic pillars for people, for planet. And underneath these 2 thematic pillars are 5 future outcomes, 2 focused on people and 3 focused on planet. You can see here a specific call out on the importance of biodiversity. So that's obviously what I want to focus on. Within our strategy, there are 11 interconnected commitments. And you can see here, I've highlighted in red, those that are specifically tied into biodiversity. So again, we're a seafood company. We're reliant on healthy fish stocks. So we've had a wild-caught sustainability commitment in place since 2016, which basically means that we've been working with our supply chain to ensure all of the fisheries are operating responsibly and sustainably, and that all fish stocks are at a healthy and an abundance level. And so all of that work that we've done to date in terms of fish stocks, we're now replicating across other supply chains within Thai Union. We're very, very big in tuna processing, but we also source a number of other different species as well. And so it's really making sure that our fisheries enter a robust framework, that we have monitoring and verification in place to ensure that they're progressing against an internationally recognized certification. We've also introduced our first group international aquaculture commitment. So Thai Union is also very big in frozen products, particularly shrimp. And for Thailand is a key sourcing country for us. And so we've introduced our first commitment that really encompasses 5 different things. And one of those 5 things is an environmental framework that encompasses all of the important elements of biodiversity. So there are about 13,000 active shrimp farms in Thailand. Don't quote me on that number, but it's an awful lot. And we source from thousands of them. Right, but Thai Union don't own these farms. So we need a framework in place, we need a mechanism in place to ensure that we're moving hundreds, if not thousands of farms towards more environmentally friendly practices that recognize the importance of biodiversity and are putting in place measures to protect and restore. So they're the 2 big ones. I've put in a dotted line climate change. We're the first global seafood company to also have SBTIs, science-based targets aligned with 1.5 degrees and the Paris Agreement. I put it in a dashed line because, you know, it's connected in with biodiversity, but also, you know, as a standalone topic, as is the same with best-in-class manufacturing. So best-in-class manufacturing is moving all of our manufacturing footprint completely closed loop. That means 0 food waste, 0 waste to landfill, and 0 wastewater discharge. So again, indirect benefits there also to biodiversity and the local ecosystem. Ocean plastics, which we'll hear more on later on. Obviously, you know, that is a threat to our oceans. And again, because we're reliant on a natural resource, we consider that a threat to Thai Union as well. So we're not only looking at mitigating our use of plastics, but we're focusing on the topic of ghost gear, which is fishing gear that is often lost at sea. Not deliberately, but through a number of different causes. So really working with our supply chain to reduce the amount of ghost gear that's lost, because that can have a fundamental impact on local biodiversity. The last two are responsible agriculture. So this is looking at three things: palm, soy, and chicken. So particularly palm and soy can be linked to deforestation. We know that's critical to protect biodiversity. And so we have commitments towards 2030 where we want 100% of our palm and soy to be certified by 2030. And then the last one is on ecosystem restoration. And this is really about, not just doing less bad, not reducing our impact, but also giving back. We have, some significant projects here in Thailand related to mangroves, related to coral reefs, and we'll be extending these globally, ultimately contributing about $7 million over the next few years. So talking about money, there's very ambitious commitments for the seafood industry. We're carving out what it means to be a leader, but obviously we can't just have ambitious statements. We need to back that up with financial teeth as such. And so Ludovic, he's our CFO. We went around the world launching this new strategy last year. And together with this launch, we were very, very clear on the importance to dedicate the financial resources to be successful. So Thai Union are investing every single dollar we earn in 2022 towards sustainability. Okay, 100% of our net profit. That's about $200 million. But sustainability is not new. We've already invested $100 million to date. We're adding in now an additional $200 million to ensure that we're successful. And then lastly, what I wanted to talk about is, obviously in relation to this panel, is the importance of blue financing. We had one example from the previous speaker in terms of the importance of attracting financing for the world's oceans. What we've done is we've tried to couple our sustainability performance with our commercial performance. And so we were one of the first to have and to issue blue financing. I think we now have 7 or 8 sustainability-linked loans and sustainability-linked bonds. Long-term financing for us is about $1.4 billion US. And we want 75% of it to be linked to sustainability, within our oceans by 2025. We are currently at about 2/3. Okay, so we've made an awful lot of progress. This is a picture of our CEO, Kuntirapong. Just a few months ago, we launched our second phase of blue financing. And so just to talk about some of the KPIs, we link as it relates to biodiversity. So number one is we're making sure that all of our fishing vessels have what we call electronic monitoring on them. And so when they go off onto the high seas, they're actually being held accountable to what they're catching, in what quotas they're being caught, are they catching what they're supposed to be catching, which again can have profound impacts on what we call IUU fishing. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, which is one of the biggest threats for biodiversity. So that's the first link with biodiversity. The second comes in the shrimp supply chain, where again, we're moving all of those farms that I spoke about, not just in Thailand, but around the world into an independent framework that ultimately ensures the farms that we're sourcing from are protecting the local biodiversity. So there are a number of different other KPIs related to climate change and our performance on different sustainability rankings, but those are the two specifically as it relates to biodiversity. So that is a quick snapshot of our strategy, how it connects in with biodiversity, some of the targets that we have, and then also what we're trying to do to also promote the amount of financing that's coming into the world's oceans.
Thank you very much, Kun Adam. So I think everybody, most of us actually maybe already use or eat product from Thai Union, maybe our pet animal as well. So it's very promising to see the commitment that you already see set the target in the next 7 years with quite very substantial amount of investment as well. So next, I will come back to you with another follow-up question. But next, I would like to invite คุณแดน ปฐมวณิช นะคะ CEO of NRF Food นะคะ Public Company to share with us about your journey. What's NRF have done to carry on your mission toward this nature positive pathway ค่ะ
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so our company is NRF, and it actually, I mean, internally it's the acronym is Nature Regenerative Foods. So very much similar to other listed companies, we are a triple P as well. So very much focused on people, planet, and performance. And it's been an interesting journey. So we are one of the first public companies to commit specifically within SDG 13, so climate action, on many various initiatives. For example, like the race to net zero. And during this commitment, what we've found is, and we became really famous in 2020 talking about the future of food and how the world is being impacted by the impact of basically industrialization of food. And one of the things that we found, which is a sad fact, right, really is the impact of and the loss of biodiversity. Oh, there we go. Okay, so just very quickly, so our company, we have three primary strategies, and this is how we started off 5 years ago. Okay, so we've got one, which is specialty food, so we make a variety of different foods, including pet food. We have direct-to-consumer, which is both e-commerce and an omni-channel Asian grocery. So we've acquired supermarkets in the UK, and we will be the largest supermarket chain in London by this summer. And then hopefully in the next few years, we'll expand that into other countries as well. And you know, we went into Asian grocery, and I'll get more to that in a moment because I think it's a very important point here. We got into Asian groceries because you know, we make Asian groceries, right? We make more than 3,000 SKUs a year, 600 products, sauces, condiments, etc. The Asian groceries food sector is about $60 billion a year around the world. So if you go to any Chinatown around the world, that's, you know, Asian grocery. And I would say, unfortunately, it's also a big contributor to some of the losses that are occurring, both from a climate and biodiversity perspective. The last part we got into climate action was we were trying to figure out a way, how do we get to net zero, right? And I think this is the biggest challenge, both at a product level and a company level. Although we are not like a hard to abate sector, for example, like cement, for example, I think the hardest part of within the food system, right, is dealing with farmers and getting them to practice, or getting them to implement things that we need in order to go to net zero. So, you know, I think most of everybody knows, right, the impact of the food system on the environment and on basically nature, and how do we actually take our economy, especially Thailand, right, as a net food exporter, faced with a very big problem, right? So by 2050, you know, we're assuming now the world is definitely going to warm more than 2 degrees, right? We'll most likely lose 1 growing season. But then if we take that further and then we look at the impact of losing a growing season in the next 30 years, right? We're getting to food security. Thailand is a center for biodiversity, right? So you've got in Hua Hin, Prachuap, all the way down to Hat Yai is a migratory pathway for birds. So you're looking at massive losses, right? And then how can Thailand potentially be a showcase for change? So, you know, we're a member of various organizations, including the World Business Sustainable Development Council. And, you know, we were, you know, it's a pretty simple framework in terms of how we're setting our goals internally. For example, focus on what we can change, setting the baseline, and then setting our commitments. But more importantly, right, and I think very different to basically the sea, is agriculture, which is basically a large contributor to Thailand's economy. And so if we look at it, we've got to combine both ecological management and then agriculture together. This is super important, especially because we make food. Almost most of our raw materials come from farmers. So if we look at this, and I think this is where we came to realize that our food system is broken. So if you look at the left side, right, there's various practices, best practices that we need to implement in order to be both circular, right, and regenerative, right? So, you know, we've got to focus on smallholder farmers, right? So despite the fact that, you know, 4 crops make the majority of our food and calories, right? The smallholder farmers represent probably the critical, I would say, component of our food system. And being able to bring them along, including basically farm industrialization, is very important. Now, if you look on the right side of the equation, right, then you've got responsible governance, and then you've got circular economy, right? You've got basically the demand on the right, and then you've got the supply on the left, right? The demand being supermarkets, right? I don't know if anybody here represents any supermarkets. The left being manufacturers, and then being farmers, on the farming side, right? And the issue is this, and so, and this is exacerbated by COVID, right? So in a world where we have inflation, so grocery inflation in Europe was more than 10%. It's fallen, but it was 9% as of December in the UK, targeted to be 3 to 4% by the end of this year. The problem is we have less disposable income, right? Which means people have less money to spend on groceries, okay? And because everybody has less money to spend on groceries, right, they're prioritizing their spending on groceries, right? And the problem is this, right? In a world globally that's dominated by very large supermarkets, right, every year these supermarkets are competing on price. And this is where I say the food system is broken. And so because they compete on price, they squeeze their supply chain, right? So every year, companies like us, we do our track to the different supermarkets, and they say, you know, we want either no price increase or a price decrease. But we want you to be more sustainable, to use less plastic. We want you to practice this, and this, right? And now we're saying that you've got to also be climate friendly, you've got to go to net zero, and you've got to think about both the ecology, you've got to think about biodiversity, et cetera. So, you know, at the end of the day, who pays for this, right? And this is, I think this is the central question, right? Who pays for all of these governance changes in our food system, right? Because it's certainly not on the demand side, right? So this falls onto the shoulders of the manufacturing and the farming side. And, you know, the manufacturing side being mostly large companies, right? We've got to, you know, we basically got to protect our margins, right? This now squeezes the smallholder farmers and the agriculture side. I think this is an inherent problem, and this is why I say our food system is broken. And it's one of the reasons why we decided to jump into retail. So for us, 2 years ago, we decided that we would kind of alter our business model. Okay, so originally we were midstream to upstream, right? So we had farms and we had manufacturing. We had some e-commerce, but we never jumped into grocery. And we thought, well, we're constantly being squeezed by supermarkets, right? Well, why don't we just get into the supermarket, the retail business, but focusing within the ethnic supermarkets. So not mainstream, but ethnic. So Chinese supermarkets, Vietnamese supermarkets, a variety of different ethnic supermarkets overseas. Now, so and it's a great opportunity, discussion for another crowd, but essentially it's big enough, $60 billion a year, where you know, we hopefully will be probably $200 million revenue from this strategy in the next 18 months, maybe $500 million in the next 36 months. It allows us to basically take margin that, so essentially it's streamlined, right? So we've got farms, manufacturing, and retail, no middleman, adds extra margin. We can now take that extra margin, go back to our farmers and say, listen, okay, we're gonna buy it above market prices. So if market price is like, say, $1 a kilo, we'll buy somewhere between 20 to 35% above market, right? But this is what you need to do, right? So we've actually gone to governments. I don't know if you can see this here. So we're starting off in the UK. We'll be 13 locations by summer, and then we'll probably be 20 by the end of the year. But essentially, if you look on this bottom left-hand side, so the Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia visited our supermarkets, and then the whole Trade Commission of 30 exporters visited our supermarkets. And essentially, what we're telling is this: listen, we would love to promote Malaysian food products, right? We would love to do it. We'd love to pay you more, right? But this is what you need to do, right? And it's essentially it's within our purview to do it. And so going back to the supply chain, I think two things are of a very big focus for us, right? So one is obviously the race to net zero, right? So ensuring that within our supply chain, people are practicing regenerative agriculture. We're sponsoring like a biochar project, which I'll talk about in a moment, up in the north within our supply chain, and then we'll pay them more. Interestingly enough, I want you to look at this picture right here. So most of you who are from Europe, I see there's some potentially people from Europe, maybe from France. Every supermarket, if you've ever seen an Asian supermarket, right, probably imports $20,000 of fresh fruit and vegetable per branch per week into Europe from Thailand or China. Okay, it's a very carbon-intensive supply chain, and despite the fact that it's not very climate friendly, but it does help and represents a major opportunity for Asian farmers to be able to provide sustainably produced products with a very good margin. And if we can basically take the objectives of focusing on both climate change, SDG number 13 and then number 15 on biodiversity, to ensure that they're taking care of their farms, they're implementing like no tilling, they're doing crop rotations, etc. Doing natural kind of like pest prevention. Hopefully we can make a turn. I found this is always something that was like super easy to communicate to people, especially like farmer groups, right? With the goal of 2030 being how do we just basically stop and then and start on our way to recovery. I feel there's one thing that I did want to promote, which we're doing up in the north, which is biochar, which I feel is a critical component for this. And so despite it being more on the decarbonization side, what we're doing with biochar is basically we're incentivizing farmers to basically take what they would have burned, basically farm residue. Okay, so as you know that we have a really big air pollution problem at the moment, so PM 2.5. The majority of which is, farmers burning residue, corn stubble, etc. There's mountains of corn stubble at the moment up in the north. They're burning it, Laos is burning it, Myanmar is burning it, and so we're basically paying them not to burn it, convert it to biochar, and then we apply into our supply chain generating carbon credits, and then hopefully decarbonizing both our products and then our supply chain. But I would say that's as part of the the effort to improve biodiversity, obviously stopping any form of burning, including forest fires, obviously will be an important contributor to this. So I think with this and then practicing farmer sharing, I think one of the most important contributions we hope to make over the next 3 years, as we scale out our grocery platform and provide a means for farmers to make more money by implementing sustainable practices, right, is potentially working with the Bank of Agriculture, as well as the Exim Bank, the bank for export, on providing loans to these farmers to be able to help to have them basically potentially improve how they irrigate, how they farm their land. Yeah, so that's my presentation. Yep.
Thank you very much, Ka. Very impressive, and congratulations for all your work, Naka. I think I really see the similarity as a Thai union, right? You said you have 30,000 not farmer like a farm, but you want to work with them and you also work through your farmer as well. So I think it's like together as a collective action we can achieve something. So next I would like to invite Kun Nick on the video record to share with us about Second Life, how Second Life is actually first company in Thailand that taking it on the mission to combat ocean plastic. So let's play the presentation on the recovery and recycling plastic within Thailand and coastal and island community in Thailand ค่ะ
สวัสดีครับผมชื่อนิกสุพัทรวินินะครับเป็นผู้อำนวยการของบริษัท Second Life แล้วก็เป็นเกียรติอย่างยิ่งที่ได้เข้ามาร่วมงานในวันนี้นะครับแล้วก็ต้องขอโทษที่ไม่สามารถเข้ามาร่วมงานเป็น in person นะครับขออนุญาตให้ผมพูดเป็นภาษาอังกฤษในการนำเสนอวันนี้นะครับ Hello everyone, my name is Nick Supatravinit. I am the director of Second Life. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. I'm very sorry that I am not able to be there in person, but I'd like to be able to talk a bit about Second Life and the work we do, and really about the intersections between sustainability, finance, and then also biodiversity here today. So Second Life is a social enterprise. We were founded in 2020 as part of a large organization that was working with carbon and tree planting and reforestry. And for us, we focus a lot on ocean plastic collection and ocean plastic recycling activities, mainly in Thailand, although we've had partnerships in Indonesia and then also in Vietnam. So today, I'd like to talk a bit about the agenda, which is really about collecting and recycling plastic in Thailand's coastal and island communities. I'll go over the state of ocean plastic pollution in Thailand. What does Second Life do to prevent this? Challenges that we've faced in the field and how we've overcome them. Some of our success stories and impact that we've made so far, and as well touch briefly on really what I see as the link between finance, sustainability, and biodiversity. So really looking at the state of ocean plastic pollution in Thailand, we know that it's a big problem everywhere. There's around 8 million tons of plastic pollution globally that enters into our oceans every year. It's estimated that Thailand is number 10 of the biggest dumpers of ocean plastic in the world, which is not great. And we estimate that on general, there's around 51,000 tons of plastic that's estimated to enter the oceans by Thailand every year. So we know that 90% of global ocean plastic leakage comes from Asia. And really what we've seen through our work in the field has been that this leakage is really caused by a funding gap in the local ocean plastic supply chain. And so what we see is that solutions are really needed to close this funding gap and therefore stop this ocean plastic leakage. So what does Second Life do to try and stop this? Really, the way that we work is we work with corporates to try and prevent this ocean plastic pollution from becoming a larger problem than it currently is. We work with partners to assess and reduce their plastic footprint. How do they contribute to the global plastic problem? Finding ways that they can then contribute and take initiatives and take action, proactive action on collection and recycling of waste outside of their value chain. And then 3 is, of course, advocating, so making communications, working with industry and institutional platforms, and then also other campaigns that Second Life has. But today I'd like to focus really on the second part, which is around contributions. So how do organizations work with Second Life and start to take action on ocean plastic? So how do we partner with corporates? We try to partner with corporates to essentially make the most impact. We are really here to try and bridge this funding gap, taking funding from organizations and redirecting it through the supply chain. And here we invite a lot of corporates and any corporates that are here today to really be part of this global plastic effort to tackle ocean plastic. Really, what we're talking about here is 1 ton supported is equal to 1 ton collected. So what does this mean? It means that Second Life uses the money that corporates give to Second Life and the services that we provide. We use this to pay an additional incentive that you can see here above the market price. And this incentive is paid to the collectors and the informal collectors that are working on the islands in Thailand. It helps to pay for boat fuel and collection incentives, which help to bring back the plastic to the mainland to then be recycled. So really this supports the entire supply chain from informal collection on the islands through to paying for the boat transportation, through to sometimes if there's fishing nets that need to be sorted and recycled, we will also provide funding for that. And then it goes all the way to then being baled and then entering back into the ocean supply chain. And we also, of course, empower the ocean community that brings it to life. So any of the community training events that we need to do, traceability, making sure that we know where the plastic is coming from and who is selling that plastic. Infrastructure investment support, so purchasing boats, warehouses for operational support, and then also stakeholder engagement as well. So really, this is an overview of our entire ocean plastic and collection and recycling activities. Before we came onto these islands, we saw that there simply wasn't, the price to sell the plastic from these islands is much lower than the cost to collect it. So the cost to collect it includes the collection cost as well as the boat fuel cost, which is usually a 2-hour ride there and back to the mainland. And we've seen this on multiple islands in Krabi, Trang, Ranong island regions. And it's all the same problem about bringing that plastic back to the ocean, back to the mainland. So really what was happening before Second Life was that a lot of this plastic was simply being burned, or it was being open dumped in these areas, and of course open dump then leaks into the ocean, and then we have the problem of ocean plastic pollution. So you see here that a lot of the bales are sold on to local recyclers. We work with Wongpanit, Krabi, to sort and recycle and collect all this material and implement it as a program within the Krabi region. So some challenges that we faced in implementing this. We see that ocean plastic particularly has the problem of low quality ocean plastic. So plastic that has been out in the sea, in the sun, and the sand for too long. We see around less than 20% usually every year that we collect, but there is still a certain amount. As you can see here in the photo, there are some flip-flops and some labels and packaging labels which really cannot be recycled because they're too low value or they're too dirty. So here we invested in machines that you can see, which are working to convert this material waste into RDF, which is essentially fuel for energy production. It's burned as part of incineration and energy production in cement factories and the like. We also see that each island has its own challenges and social problems. Some islands are part of the national parks, some islands are uninhabited, some islands have a community, but some of those communities don't have any waste infrastructure management in place. So we see that every island has its different problem, even if some of those islands are very close to each other. So what we do is that we work directly with the community. We identify what are the local problems and how can we figure out local solutions to it. This is where we work with our local project officers in the field and finding how we can engage and provide solutions that are custom to that island. And the third is that we found that sometimes collectors also had challenges in storing the waste effectively. So they had no way to transport their plastic back to the mainland or no way to store it during the monsoon period. And so it would get dirty and filled with mosquitoes. So what we did was investing in infrastructure. So we built boats and gave out some boats to the collectors that you see here. We invested in baling machines and warehouses and all of this infrastructure support, which goes beyond just giving incentives as well. So some of our success stories and our impact in the field. We started in 2020. We did 600 tons that year, and we've grown a lot since then. We became the first globally certified project under the Global Vera standard in 2022. And as of last year, 2023, we've done over 4 million kilos of plastic that we have collected and recycled from Thailand's oceans to this day. And our goal is really to continue to grow and to continue to expand and work with all the island communities in Thailand and abroad. Some of the brands that have worked with us include Codely, which was our founding partner. We see that they engaged as and used Second Life as part of their sustainable product packaging campaigns. So they have a campaign called 100% Plastic Collect, and so they compensate for 100% of their plastic footprint every year with Second Life. And with Simrise, we work with their Thai department, Diana Pet Food, which is a pet food brand under Simrise. And here as well, they also engage to compensate for their footprint. And then also we help to organize beach cleanups and engage the community and engage the employees there as well. So finally, I'd like to talk about the link between finance, sustainability, and biodiversity. Finance and sustainability, I think one thing I can say for sure is that for something to be environmentally sustainable, it also has to be financially sustainable. So what does this mean? It means that the credit financing from Second Life really helps to cover these boat fuel costs and extra incentives. It works as an addition to the market price. And really, because it is financially sustainable for these collectors, because they can make a profit from collecting and recycling this plastic, it then becomes something that they do as a way of finding extra income. And then that also then becomes something that is environmentally sustainable. It helps to make this ocean plastic collection activity financially sustainable for the collectors, where before it was not. And really talking about the link between sustainability and ocean plastic, and why is this so important, right? Ocean plastics really directly negatively impact marine biodiversity. There's over 800 marine species that are estimated to be negatively impacted by plastic pollution. There's 11.1 billion plastics that were found to be in corals in the Asia-Pacific reefs. 50,000 microplastics generally break down from one bottle, and so this then gets ingested and enters into the food web and then also into the food we eat. And I think lastly, I'd like to talk about this point, which is that 88% of the marine bioplastics, the marine plastics or ocean plastics that are floating out in the ocean today are actually along the coastline. So what this means is that a lot of people will think that ocean plastics are floating out in the middle of the ocean, whereas what we've seen is actually this is a very small percentage. And a lot of the ocean plastic, almost 90%, is actually floating around the coastlines. It washes back up on the beaches and the shores, and that's actually why we collect on the beaches, because it's the most effective way for us to get rid of this ocean plastic over time. So here, of course, are some of our stories, and I'd love to talk a bit more, but I don't have any more time. So again, I would like to just reiterate the importance of finance, sustainability, and biodiversity, and really how we've seen them all linked together. Anything that is financially sustainable is usually also environmentally sustainable as well in the case of collection and recycling. So I would encourage the audience to engage in this discussion, considering supporting this or other similar initiatives. And again, thank you very much. If anyone would like to talk a bit further, I'm very happy to have the discussion. Here is our contact details here. You can contact us at contact@secondlife.earth, and we'd be happy to schedule a call or talk more and exchange on these points. So thank you very much for today, and again, apologies that I'm not able to be there. ขอบคุณมากครับ
ขอบคุณมากค่ะคุณนิก so we also have representative from Second Life คุณ Pauline here with us, so if you would like to learn more about Second Life, you can feel free to meet her at the networking session. So next one, I would like to invite คุณชุติการชัยศิริไพบูลย์ Export Director from Union J Plus to share with us about your circular economy project ค่ะ
Hello everyone. May I have this presentation in Thai? My name is Shutika Chaisiri Phaiboon, one of the co-founders of Union J Plus. Our company conduct and sell recycled plastic pellets. Established in 2001 by the team with over 20 years of experience in the plastic recycling business. Since then, our company has successfully created a supply chain for recycled plastic. Our business strength lie in the collaboration between various sectors, private, government, and we have a good relationship with all stakeholders in our supply chain, including collectors, sellers, and suppliers. At the beginning, our company started as an SME and managing the business like a family. But last year, we partnered with Circulate Capital of Singapore, and this Circulate Capital is an impact funding that focus on funding plastic recycling in Southeast Asia. The effect of the funding aim to reduce plastic waste. This funding provided by the government and Propago enable Union J Plus to scale up. Certainly, the company operates on a factory and a warehouse space exceeding 20,000 square meters in Samut Prakan province and also in Samut Sakhon province. Each year, we recycle plastic waste into recycled plastic pellets, contributing to the circular economy and reducing costs for the plastic producers. In the upcoming years, our company plans to expand its production capacity from 7,200 to 13,000 tons per year. This expansion involves adding machinery to the production process and expanding the customer base, particularly targeting global brands and customers who prioritize environmental sustainability and social responsibility. This commitment aims to foster sustainable growth for the company. Our vision is to be the leading plastic recycling company, adhering to international standards, responsive to customer demand, fostering product innovation and environmental responsibility. From our past experience, I apologize for this in smooth. We have learned from our experience that Thailand had lacked the regulation on the separating plastic waste. Consequently, only 20% of plastic waste that we collect is clean enough for the production, while 70% is dirty and ends up in landfill. Since Thailand is lacking the regulation on separating plastic, it is needed to enhance the knowledge of the people in the country on separating the plastic waste. This affects the product quality and sustainability control according to international regulation. Another challenge is the price competition. As more customers and more people become aware of the global warming and environmental crisis, competition in the recycled plastic business increase. So there are so many people want to sell the recycled plastic too. That's why another challenge is a price competition. And lastly, the third challenge is about the customer perception. Some of the plastic producers think that if they use the recycled plastic, their cost will be reduced, but it's not true because to produce the standard recycled plastic pellets, it's costly. So our challenge is how to enhance the knowledge and the understanding of the customer, understanding about the production process. Our limitation lie in capital investment. As we are a small company with a limited budget, we may not be able to afford the newest and most innovative machine. However, we are committed to delivering standard product to our customers as same as the international standard. Thank you.
ขอบคุณมากเลยค่ะก็เหมือนทุกคนพูดเป็นเสียงเดียวกันเนาะว่าการจะปรับเปลี่ยนผ่านไปสู่ I speak to English for you everybody say the same thing that in order to shift to the more sustainable product require money who pay for that so for Thai Union the CEO said like let's take us our profit from last year here 200 million right and Kun Dan the CEO who have the vision they said like let's change the system let's change the broken system in our hand by our own investment but also additional investment also required and you also receive some funding from the circulate capital through Propago already but it's only tiny it's not enough to change the world or solve the problem that we are facing so maybe we'd like to ask everybody just like one last question that we just at the beginning of the crisis that's going to affect us all in order to really make the consumer aware that responsible product is more expensive and someone need to pay and the system need to be changed who we should engage and how ค่ะ so maybe we can start with คุณ Adam first ค่ะ
This is not a 2-minute answer. I mean, I could talk about this for probably 2 hours. But, I will keep it short because we talk about money. Where should the money come from? June 2022, after 20 years of negotiations at the WTO, the world's governments finally decide to curb the use of harmful fishing subsidies. Curb. Those fishing subsidies are estimated to be around $22 billion every year that go into exploiting the world's oceans. So we want to start talking about where should the financing come from. Maybe at a global level, we start actually not subsidizing harmful fishing practices, but starting to subsidize responsible and sustainable fishing practices. Fisheries is a complex area. It took 20 years for these negotiations. It's a thorny topic, but we need, a number of different things. We need a clear assessment of the state of the world's fisheries. We need holistic, sustainable fishing models that include marine protected areas. A lot of this is coming with 30 by 30. We need to strengthen frameworks and government engagement and enforcement. But then most of all, we really need to incentivize financial incentives to create this change. Because at the minute, there is more money to be made with unsustainable fishing than sustainable fishing. The system is broken, as some of my other colleagues on the panel have referred to, and we've got to start addressing some of those root causes.
So it's a very complex question, but there is a simple answer, which is the consumer, right? So the consumer needs to pay more. Unfortunately, in a world of inflation, where inflation is not a popular issue to deal with, especially in an election year. The gatekeepers to that is actually the supermarkets. And so I think essentially okay, so, and I think this is a very important point, right? Subsidies, I think every country has subsidies, right? Especially in agriculture, because that's your voting base, right? Thailand, there's 14 to 15 million voters in agriculture. So I think one part is definitely in the government's not invisible hand, but direct intervention in terms of subsidies. I think that's definitely an issue. But I think the greater issue is basically how ultimately how consumers and retailers engage with one another, and then how do you pay for what, right? So we cannot always just be happy with paying for cheap product. Unfortunately, that's going to be a non-sustainable path moving forward, right? So I think number one, we need to engage with retailers. Retailers need to accept that we cannot punish supply chain, but with ever increasing governance requirements and constant price decreases. I'm sure Thai Union has the same conversation every year with their retailers. I have the same. We pack for more than almost 80 supermarkets around the world, including almost most famous supermarkets that you know of, whether it's in Europe, North America, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore. And so I can tell you for a fact, right, the first point of engagement is the retailer, right? They want sustainability. They got to accept that sustainability comes with a price. They cannot pass the buck on. I think number two is I think consumers, unfortunately, in a world of this of hyperinflation, needs to understand that we need to also pay as well, pay our share, right? And that comes hand in hand with supermarkets. And I think if the consumer, governments, and supermarkets get it right, and we're not forcing the farmers to do the things that they shouldn't be doing, I think that's already 80% of the challenge already. The other 20% of the problem, which also represents 80% of the problem, in my opinion, is actually the informal market. So all the mainstream supermarkets, where it's Tesco, Carrefour, Aldi, they're held accountable to shareholders because they're public companies, right? But if you think about it, and for example, like the groceries that we're buying to, they're not held accountable to anybody. There is no food safety compliance, right? There is no sustainability requirements, and that's a huge sector. So if you look at it, as I mentioned, just Asian grocery alone is $60 billion a year industry, right? No compliance, right? There's no BRC requirements, etc. So that informal sector needs to join the equation as well, right? So we need to engage mainstream supermarkets. We need to engage the informal sector, right? The non-mainstream, right? And bring them into the fold. And that entire ecosystem will drag everybody else in the entire food supply chain moving forward. And I think that's a very easy, achievable path to handle versus trying to, turn other hard-to-abate sectors carbon-friendly.
Speaking on behalf of the Recycle Plastic Factory, our vision is to significantly reduce plastic waste in the environment. To achieve this goal, we want the government to implement the regulation that focus on improving the collection of the plastic waste. I see other countries start to implement these regulations and taking them seriously. We also want the government to support more the use of the environmental friendly plastic packaging. By implementing this regulation and this action, we can enhance the availability of the green products and effective address the plastic waste issue, ultimately contributing to mitigating the impact of the global warming and to have a better environment. Thank you.
คุณวิทยากรทุกท่านมากเลยนะคะก็ for people and planet นะคะเราจะต้องร่วมกันให้ความรู้แล้วก็ให้ข้อมูลต่างๆไม่ว่าจะกับทั้ง consumer แล้วตลอดจนถึงทุก supply chain แล้วนะคะก็ในเซสชันนี้ก็ขอปิดการดำเนินการเท่านี้ค่ะขอบคุณค่ะ
ขอบคุณมากค่ะ